Okay, so we've got ourselves a project here. Someone has contacted me and asked me about repotting Phalaenopsis, and they had a number of Phalaenopsis that they wanted me to look at, and this is the one we're going to look at now. You can see that this plant looks very healthy. There aren't any, doesn't show any signs of bugs or anything of that nature. However, it clearly needs to be repotted. It's been in this pot for some time, and you can see it's been a regular bloomer. But this poor guy is in dire need of repotting. The roots have all wrapped around on the inside of the pot, so unfortunately we're going to lose some of those roots as we repot. But it looks like it has plenty of roots to live on. I'm going to try and minimize the damage here. But as you can see, it's been in a pot that has no drainage, and that's not good. But it is a clay pot, so it will absorb that moisture fairly quickly and evaporate it. So here's the plant that we have, and you can see it's got lots of roots. So let's pull it out of its pot. The roots, as I say, have all wrapped around everything. The medium is very well, it's rotted for the most part. It's old medium. I don't know how long it's been in here, but it is just falling apart as I do this. You can see pretty easy to get the bark out of there. It hasn't been watered recently, so that helps, but the bark is very loose. You can see it's disintegrated quite a bit. So let's just clean this up a bit. Surprisingly, most of the roots look very good on this plant. You've got a minimal amount that are not good. So I'm going to get some alcohol here, and I'm just going to clean my instruments. Actually, the pot that this plant was in is a fairly good pot. You can see it's got a raised section in the center, lots of big holes in the bottom, which allows for good drainage. And one thing to keep in mind with Phalaenopsis is that the roots do photosynthesize, and so putting them into a clear pot allows the light to get in and to assist the plant and nurture the plant with the roots photosynthesizing. But that pot is a little small for what we need. Okay. So let's clean up my instruments here with a little bit of alcohol, and this is just to ensure that I don't transfer any virus or other fungal problems and so forth onto this repotted plant. Okay, so let's just clean this up a little bit. There's not a lot here to be concerned about. I'm just going to clean up these past inflorescence. Don't need those on there. Got a few dead leaves from before that we can clean off of there. And like I say, most of the roots look pretty good. There are some dead ones in the center here. but most of them look pretty healthy. A little peaked perhaps because they've been inside that pot. You can see there's some roots inside here that we've got to snip off just to clean it up. That root looks a little rotted. You can tell a good root on most orchids, certainly with Phalaenopsis. They will have a green tinge to them if they've been exposed to the light. As I said, these are more yellow, but they're firm. We do have some dead root here. You can see how stringy it is and mushy. Those roots we can get rid of. But these ones at the top, they're dark here simply because they're the ones that have been getting the water, and if it's not pure water, then you get the calcification and so on that happens there. So see, we've got a few bad roots here, but like I say, most of these are pretty good, surprisingly, because I don't think the person that owns this has been overwatering it all, and like I say, it does help that it's in the clay pot, because that dries up pretty quickly. Let's see, we've got some dead root inside here. See how that is mushy and it's doesn't have any substance to it any longer, but all these look like very good roots. It's got quite a few. It's got a lot more than we actually need. Let's just take a look here. Looks like everything there is good. We've got some dark root there we can get rid of. I'm just going to snip this back because it's more than we need. Oh, here's another one that has some dead ends to it. Again, I'm not concerned about cutting the root back on this. It's got lots of root to keep it going. And it's viable root as well. So let's see. I'm just going to, let me just dump this. And I'm going to put this here in the bin, and I'm just going to run some water over it to loosen up some of these external roots here. See these ones that have kind of a grayish color to them? They'll turn green when they get wet because the vellum, which covers the root itself, absorbs the moisture and then carries it to the root. But you can see they're green, and that's because they photosynthesize. These roots have been exposed to the outside, and so they've been exposed to the sun. The internal ones have been not exposed to the sun, and so they're not showing the green coloration. Let me just clear some things out of the way here. Okay, so let's see what we've got. Make sure we've got all the dead root. Oh, here's another one that can come out. See that? There's the root there, that fine filament. That's the root, and the vellum covers that. But this root is gone. Okay, we've got lots of root there. See how it's yellow? And it looks like we've lost a piece of root here. It broke off. That's okay. We've got lots to work with. I'm going to cut this one back as well because, again, we don't have a shortage of root on this, which is good to see. But oftentimes when you do this, you're going to find that there's very little root that's viable, other than potentially these top roots. And it helps to wet them so that you can identify whether they're live roots or not, first of all. And then secondly, by wetting them, it will allow you to, they become more flexible. And so it allows you to place them in the pot, the new pot, much easier without snapping them. Okay, well that looks pretty good. And again, you can see that this is a plant that looks pretty healthy. I'm just going to take that pad that I had with the alcohol in it and just wipe it over just to clean the leaves a little bit. But this is really a very healthy plant. It's not going to have any trouble at all surviving the repot process. And I'm just doing this to kind of clean the leaves off, give them a fresh start if there's any dust and so forth in there. It just helps to clean that. This plant looks very, very good, actually. Okay. Alright, we can finish up that when we finish repotting. I think I've gotten the worst of it anyway. So that's good. Okay, now let's put that to the side. I'm going to take this away for a moment. And I've got some potting mix that we have made up. The Orchid Society prepares its own potting mix, and it is made up of fir bark. We also put perlite in there, some sphagnum moss from New Zealand, and we use that sphagnum because it's more durable. It stands up better. There's some charcoal in here. There's also a little bit of coconut husk and something we call growstone. Growstone is a product that's used for hydroponics. Well, that's mainly what's in the mix. And this is not a real coarse mix. It's a medium, what I would call a medium mix. That allows the roots to establish and will also allow the water to run through the pot. Now, I'm going to choose a larger pot because, as I said, this plant has a lot of root to it. It's a big plant, and this plant has come out of a pot this size. It's about a 5-inch plastic pot. But we're going to go to something larger, something more this size. Actually, let's see what we have here. This might be a little deeper. There's lots of good holes in the bottom of this. I like these pots because they have all of the holes along the side and on the bottom. They drain extremely well. And so your roots are less likely to be sitting in water and rotting. Maybe I'll actually try to use this pot to facilitate the recovery quick recovery of this plant after being repotted. Like I say, they do go into a bit of shock once they've been repotted, and they take a little while just to reestablish themselves. Okay, so I'm going to clean with alcohol again on the cutters, and I'm going to trim some of those roots. We've got a few too many roots, more than what we need for sure, so I'm going to trim some of those off. Okay. Just a moment here. And let's see. Okay. Let's just get this plant in front of us again and see what we have here. So we're going to be putting this into this pot, and you can see we've got quite a bunch of roots to go with it. So we've got a lot more than what we need. I'm going to shorten these roots. You can see that they're fairly long, and we don't need all these roots. It'll be nice for it to reestablish some fresh roots. So I'm just going to snip some of these off. Some of them are rotted at the ends anyway. And this plant will have no problem recovering from what I'm doing to it here. You can see there's quite a bit of root. That one had a broken spot in it, so as did that one. Okay, I think we should be able to fit that in the pot. We'll certainly try. Let me just empty this. Okay. So here we go. We've got our plant and we've got our pot. Now, this has very good drainage in it, as I said. You can see that it's got lots of holes in the bottom of the pot and at the sides. You may want to add a few styrofoam beads in there, and I'll show you that. See, here are some of those styrofoam popcorns or whatever you want to call them. You can add a few of those in the bottom. It just helps to ensure that the roots are not sitting in water. I don't know that we actually need it in this case, but alright, let's see if we can fit this. Now you can see that this plant has grown to the side. And if we can, we want to try and prop it up a little bit. So let's see what we can do in that regard. And you just try and wrap those roots on the inside if you can get them in there. Just try and fit them on the inside and get that plant established in that pot. This guy's not going to stand up very well simply because he's been growing that way for some time, I think, but that's probably about the best I'm going to get him. And you can see the roots are plentiful in this plant. Okay, so now let's take some of our potting mix and we'll put it into the pot. Now we want to make sure that we fill up all of the cracks and crevices and try to fill the spots in as much as possible. I'm going to use this clay pot that it came in. I'm going to use that just to put the bark in and help me to distribute it. Okay, so I've got some bark in here, so I'm going to start placing it inside here. And it's going to spill all over the place, but we'll collect that. Just put a little bit in there and then start poking it either with your finger, or if you have those all those skewers that you use for the barbecue. You can use that and just keep poking that inside there. Kind of shift it around as best you can. I'm going to turn the plant around and we'll put some more bark on this side. And the size of this bark is such that it's pretty good in terms of fitting in between the roots. If you get bark that's too large, you're going to have trouble getting that bark to fall down amongst the roots. But just keep poking away. Don't be afraid of damaging the roots. You know, you do it fairly carefully, but you've got to get it inside there, and then occasionally just lift it up, tap it a little bit, poke it down. You can see here that the bark is hesitating to get down there. Now let's see what I've got here that I might use. Oh, I've got this plastic poker that I can use. Just to help push that down inside there as best we can get it. Get in between those crevices. And move the plant around here again. Again, this guy is going to have difficulty growing upward just the way that it's been growing for so many years, I suspect. Okay, we'll put some more bark in there. Bark on the other side. And just keep working it down as best you can. Get it down there. Tap it. You'll find that that'll work it down fairly well. You can see it's starting to find its way there. I'm going to use this poker to get some of that down inside. And that's the other nice thing about the clear pots. You can see what's going on as far as your potting mix as well. As I say, normally when you're doing this, you don't have a lot of root to work with, and so it doesn't take much to get the potting mix down there. But here we've got a lot of root, and consequently it obstructs what we're trying to do, but that's okay. We'll persist. Put some more bark in there. Surprising when you get going. Now this root has come out of the pot. I'm just going to leave that like that. It's fine. Aerial roots are not a problem at all. It's natural for Phalaenopsis to have aerial roots. Not unusual. See, we've got a little bit of moss in there. Try and tuck that moss down. The moss will hold a little bit of moisture for a period of time and help your plant to have some time to get those roots absorbing. Now you can see the potting mix has worked its way down in most areas. We've got a little spot here where it doesn't seem to want to go down, so I'm going to see if I can poke that down there. just do the best you can. As I said, don't worry too much about damaging the roots. You don't want to use a sledgehammer or anything like that, but you know, as long as you're being cautious, they'll be fine. They're a lot more resilient than we think sometimes. Okay. Okay, well that plant looks like it's pretty well potted now. It looks pretty good. Okay, now we're going to put some water on this as well, and that'll help to get the bark and so on into the crevices. See, there's still room for bark to fit in there. And when you do your first watering, I haven't pre-soaked this mix, and that was intentional. I've got moss in there and I've got coconut husk, and it'll take a few waterings for that bark to really start to absorb the moisture. So what I will instruct the owner of this plant to do is to soak the whole thing in a tub like this, put some water in it, just let it soak in there, and that will assist as well. Now be careful when you're watering that you don't get water inside the crown of the plant. That can cause rot, and I see I've got a little bit of vermiculite in here that needs to come out, and I don't have the right instrument here to do that, but maybe if I use this. I've kind of crushed it there, and hopefully when we water that will be okay. If any water gets in there, we'll use one of these cosmetic pads to just kind of soak that up. Okay? Alright, so there is the repotted plant. So like I said, now we're going to water the plant. Okay? And I'm going to use that tub that we had before to do the watering. Now I'm using RO water, which is water that is filtered, so any of the minerals and chemicals from the city system have been drained out of it, and or filtered out of it, sorry. And so we're using fresh water. Now when you repot, I would recommend that you don't fertilize until you start to see the roots reacting to the repotting, where you see new roots growing or new root tips coming. Now with this plant, because it's got such a good root system to it, I wouldn't be adverse to using fertilizer fairly soon. But generally I hold off until about 4 weeks, when you should start to see roots starting to develop. Okay, so now I'm going to use some water here and just soak the mix, let it drain right through. And I am going to put some on the crown here to just try and rinse out that that vermiculite that got in there, and then I'll dry it afterward. And you can see we want to get that water right inside there, all around the plant. So, you know, tip up the plant, do whatever you have to make sure all of that bark gets wetted. Alright, so there, now we have watered the medium. We've wetted the medium. As I said, I used a little bit of vermiculite, and it got inside the crown here, and I watered as a result. So I'm just going to take one of these little pads here, just to clean that water out of there. You can just put it right down inside. Make sure it gets all that water that's gone inside there. I can still see some down in there, so I'm going to just put this down inside, just absorb that. You might want to put it in front of a fan as soon as you are done, just to let it dry out. Still a little bit of water in there, so that's what I'm going to do after I'm done. I'm going to put this in front of a fan and make sure that it dries out inside the crown. And as I mentioned before, good idea to clean the leaves, so I'm just going to put a little bit of alcohol on one of these makeup pads, and I'm just going to run it across the leaves again. If there are any little critters or anything of that nature there, this will take care of them. But this plant is in very good shape. You can see there's dust on the leaves, and this will help clean those spores out. Pores. And allow those leaves to breathe a little better. You might want to do the underside too. If you ever have had plants with scale, you'll know that scale likes to go on the underside of the leaves. And just a good swipe like this periodically helps to prevent that from building up. Because you will normally get some kind of a pest, either a mealybug or a scale or something on your plants. And heaven knows where it comes from, but it does. And so a regular wiping down of the leaves with a little bit of rubbing alcohol is always good. Okay, well, I think that does the job here. Okay, now the last thing I would recommend when you're doing a repotting, this particular plant did not have a tag, and consequently there is no name to it. We don't know what the hybrid is. This probably was purchased at a Costco or the grocery store or something, given as a gift, and it's a plant that the person wants to hold on to. They cherish the plant, and that's great, but we don't have a name to it. So, but one thing I would do is to put a tag in your pot and just note the date that you repotted. Now, this particular plant probably won't need repotting for probably 2 years, and it's well established for that period of time. So let's just put the date here. I'm just going to put the month and the year. So it's February of 21. Just use one of those permanent markers and just set that inside the pot. Stick it down far enough that it's going to stay there and not come loose. And that's just a reminder for you of when it was repotted, and just to kind of keep an eye on the medium until a couple of years have passed, and then that will indicate to you it might be time to repot again. Okay, so that's our repotting of the Phalaenopsis.